Today we are excited to discuss a very interesting model which represents a simple fishery system. This model captures fish reproduction and diverse fishing styles of fishers in the Swedish Baltic Sea fishery. It aims to explore the consequences of various human environmental factors on fishery management. Before we get into the specifics, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello, I'm Nanda Weijermans and I'm an associate professor at the Stockholm Resilience Center, Stockholm University. And I am modeling typically human behavior in groups, collective action problems, and among others in fisheries.
Thank you. Can you explain the primary goal of the model, particularly how it aims to reflect different fishing behaviors observed in the Swedish Baltic Sea fishery and explore the impacts of various human and environmental scenarios?
So this model is really focusing on contributing to fishery science in the sense that they already for years acknowledge that we need to make our models more sensitive to the human factor. So how do we do that? We don't make use enough of the insights of social fishery science, and that while we have still a big problem with overfishing, even though there is regulation. So there is a big call for how do you do this, because it's hard to do, and where to find this knowledge in social fishery science. So that's why there's this call for human behavioral realism, and so the model is really made to show what a next generation fishery model could look like, that really has both the social and the ecological with internal dynamics and influencing each other. So that was really mainly the purpose, like a demonstration, and then also to show what that means. And if you would take it more seriously to have social fishery science included in your models, that means that you acknowledge certain things, like that there is a diversity in motivations, that there's a diversity therefore in behavior. So what we did is then work together with some colleagues that have done research with fishers in the Baltic Sea. So the model is not trying to reflect directly the Baltic Sea, but it's inspired by the work that is done there. So it's already an abstraction level higher. So what my colleagues did, they interviewed several fishers, and based on these conversations they had with the fishers, they made a typology of different types, and they show inherently differences in not just their practice, so how they fish, where they fish, but also really the motivations for fishing. So a lot of regulation assume a sort of a rational actor kind of thinking under it. But if I would listen to these different styles, the reasoning was very different. So what we did is then really show with the model of how that clashes, in a sense that you have a regulation that assumes one thing and fishes that respond in different ways. So that's how we then formalized these different fishing styles, and for each of them we showed, okay, how do they fish, but also how do they respond to regulation, and how you can then check in such a model, because it's multi-level, how certain patterns on a macro level then can be explained by looking inside the model, okay, why are these fishes now behaving this way and that? Mm-hmm. So it was also really a demonstration of how you could do it, and really detailing on how we then formalize these different fishing styles in collaboration with our experts. Yeah.
So, what were the significant challenges you faced while developing the model, especially in terms of, accurately incorporating diverse fisher behaviors and different environmental scenarios?
I think it's the challenge here is more in a co-creative process together with our experts, because it's very important for me as a modeler that I really represent the theory that my colleagues have developed, or the topology representation in a correct way. But we also then discovered together that, of course, one has this sort of description of the practices and the motivations of the fishers. But to make it work in a model, we need to complement more things, because the world is we have weekdays, we have weekends, we have all these kind of things. So how do the agents behave then? So one had to fill in gaps that was not necessarily part of the typology. So I think that was a challenge, and also for our collaborators, like, we also need to specify that. We don't know that, so how do we fill that in? So I think that is a big challenge in general, that we sometimes need to fill in gaps, whether they are logical gaps or that they are simply like not described. So how do you fill them in a like a responsible way, right? So that is a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What are the insights or findings from your model analysis, particularly regarding the different fishing styles and their impact on fishery management under various conditions?
So we had a very, very simple like demonstration by saying, okay, let's see what the effect on the policy intervention is. And we said, okay, let's do a subsidy. And we had then our different fishing styles responded different to the subsidy. For some, you would think they would go out more and then they wouldn't. And others would go out more, but were less happy. So I think the biggest thing that our model showed is that you can design a policy and you have a certain assumption of how people respond to it. But if these assumptions don't match, the behavior that is then shown by fishers is not that surprising, but surprising if you have that assumption. So I think that was the biggest insight, and also then really to show why this is happening and to be able to explain that really helped to show also the power of having like a more rich representation of human behavior in such models, if you want to help the policy thinking of like, okay, to be able to answer these why questions. Apart from that, you have predictive models that you can also use models in a different way. And I think this was very powerful to show that models have multiple functions, and this can be extremely powerful for policies to have these what-if scenarios using different ways people could possibly respond, instead of just assuming one type of model of human behavior.
Exactly. So you have archived your model, this model via Comsys.net. So what do you think about making models available to other researchers? And what were the primary obstacles you encountered in the process of, ensuring your model is usable and reusable for other researchers?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important to make our models available, and I find Comsys really amazing to enabling to share your models with our peers, and also to an extent that you really, it forces us not to just share code, but also to do the documentation. And I think this is incredibly important. There is, of course, a challenge in doing that because it costs time, and that's not always what we have. But I do think it's extremely important. So I really appreciate that, and I think it's also just great that there is a peer review in there. So apart from the review you get when you publish it in a journal, I think it's also great that there is also like on code level another check, which I really appreciate. So in that sense, a lot of the things are not such a challenge. I think the challenge is more the time, but the other things are actually quite well guided in just putting the right things in, and then it works. So I think it's really great. Yeah.
What are the next steps for this model? Are there any follow-up studies or developments planned to more explore human behaviors in fisheries and improve management strategies?
Yeah, for this model, I have quite some plans. But I lack the funding to do it. But I have a lot of ideas. So one is really to in the model as I use it now. I studied this different fishing styles separately, and I think it would be nice if they could be fishing in one sea together, and see also the interaction between the styles. I think that is very exciting. The second is that I think this model is also really nice for education. So I would like to have some time to maybe simplify it or make some exercises to use the model in that way. So also to have that explicit use for the model. Yeah, and another thing with this model, I would love to have other explanations or other representations of styles, or that other social scientists in fisheries have come up. So to also formalize more social descriptions of human behavior that are there, so that they are also more accessible for others to use. Yeah.
So thank you very much for joining me today.
Yes, you're
And
welcome.
I think it's night there, and have a great night.
Yes, it is.